right into my session on my favorite things in Sakai. So I'm just gonna downsize. I've got too many browser windows open. I can't see what's going on. I'm trying to pull up the chat here so I see if anybody has any questions. So as I go along, feel free to put your questions into the chat. I will try to ask questions at the end, but if you think of something as we go, feel free to put it in there. I will try to address them as I go, if not at the end of the session. Um, so if you joined last November, I did a session on what's new in Sakai 25. So I already kind of covered the majority of the features in 25. There are a lot of features in 25, so it is packed with cool stuff. A lot of that was courtesy of our friends in Spain who had the Unidigital grant, and they commissioned EDF to add a whole bunch of features that the S2U universities were interested in. So a lot of those were sort of developed independently during the 23 release and then merged back in for 25. So a lot of new features came in with that work on top of other enhancements and things that were kind of moving along in the normal branch. So 25 was exceptionally large in terms of new features. So if you want to see more about the kind of breadth of features in 25, I did a presentation last year. It's recorded. I put a link in the conference site. You can view it on demand whenever. I don't recommend doing it now, but it's available. And it goes through a little more detail about all of the different things that are in 25. Even so, I didn't get to every single thing because there's just a lot. I hit all of the high points though. So feel free to review that if you caught it last year and forgot, or if you didn't catch it. That will give you a more broad representation. What I'm going to be doing today is talking about just a handful of things that I think are my personal favorites. And Let me just advance. So these are a few of my favorite things in Sakai 25. So I'm going to give you kind of the bulleted list, and then we'll look at each of these in a little more detail. So number one is gradable conversations. So the conversations tool is a fairly new tool to Sakai. It came out 2, 3 versions ago, but it's kind of been iterating and adding features. And I think one of the major holdbacks for conversations, sort of taking the place of discussions, which was the legacy threaded discussion tool, is that it was difficult to grade conversations because it didn't integrate directly with the Sakai gradebook. But now it does. So that's very exciting. So if you were waiting for that grading piece to be in there, so that you didn't have to manage the grades separately, it's available now in 25, and I'll show you how that works. Another cool thing is the peer review student rubrics. So rubrics have been around for a while in Sakai, but they were really only for the instructor. If you had a peer review assignment where students are reviewing each other, there's a whole workflow. It's a really nice workflow in assignments for doing those peer evaluations, but you couldn't have them use the same rubrics that the instructors use because it wasn't in that part of the evaluation form. So you could attach a file, or you could give them guidelines on, what they're supposed to do, but you couldn't actually use the same rubric. Well, now you can. So again, I'll show you how that works. And students can actually use those clickable, gradable rubrics now in the peer review workflow. Another of my favorite things is bulk publish in announcements, assignments, and tests and quizzes. So I love it when you can be efficient for anything. So anything that gives me a bulk option when I have a lot of things to save clicks on, I'm happy about. So there's a new bulk publish, and it's a small thing, but I think it's great for efficiency. If you have several items you want to publish at once, if you're copying over from term to term, or maybe you have a sort of a template course that you're handing out to folks, so it's all set up, it just needs publishing. It makes it much easier to do those kinds of things in bulk. Um, Another of my favorite things is this new roster tool game called Name That Face, and we'll see how that works. It's primarily for the instructor, but the students can actually use it too if you want them to. Um, and then finally, there's a more granular site import. So I'll explain what that means later. I don't want to kind of spoil the headline. And just as sort of a teaser, I do also have a couple of honorable mentions that aren't on this list that I'll share at the end. So first up is gradable conversations. Now I recorded this on Nightly because I was afraid to do it live on Nightly because you kind of never know on Nightly if it's it's going to work for you. So this is a recording. We can pause and rewind if anybody wants, but so I'm just going to talk over it. There's no audio. Um, all right, so this is what gradable conversations looks like. So when you make a topic gradable, you can now go in and edit the topic. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see there's now a grade this topic checkbox. And it allows you to indicate the number of points. And then it will either create a new item or you can associate it with an item. And you can also set due dates. So if you want to have a due date and only accept responses up until a certain date, you could. So then you just publish it and that topic becomes gradable. So the way it looks when you actually have a student response, there we go, grading a student post. So this is the same topic where my demo student has posted there. You'll see a little grade menu and you can pull down that and enter points, and then you have a place for a text comment. And that text comment will transfer over to that little comment area in the grade book. So if you go to the grade book, you'll see there's the demo student that I just graded and the conversations topic that was added when I created that. So that's how the gradable conversations work in conversations. All right, so pretty cool. All right, so let's move on to our next one, which is peer review, student peer review rubrics. All right, so here we go. I'm going to show you how you set it up. So you set up the assignment like a typical assignment. The part that you really want to pay attention to is down here where you do the grading. You're still going to put in your points, but the key is to select the rubric that you want students to use, because this is going to be a peer review assignment. So even though it's also for the instructor, if you select it for the assignment, then students are able to use it. So then you choose the peer assessment option, and you can do more than one submission that they have to review. You can put additional instructions if you want. I didn't in my example, and then post it. And then I'll show you what it looks like for the student. Um, so this is what the student would see when they grade. So the student's already submitted their draft and they're grading another student. So you would see the other student's submission and you get the rubric right there, and you can select the options and put a little text comment at the bottom. So this is a student reviewing another student. And then they would submit, and it takes them right into the next student evaluation. And they can select, hopefully your students won't just go exceeds expectations on everything, but my demo students are very kind to each other. Uh, so then you submit, and there it is. And now, as an instructor, if you go back in and take a look at the peer review grades, you'll see that each of the student items has a little rubric icon, and you can click on it to see what that rubric selection is. Or if you click on the submission from the student and you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that there's a little area at the bottom where the peer reviews show up. And so you can expand those and view the rubric and any comments there. So that's where you would go to find the peer review evaluations. So yeah, very cool. All right. We move on to bulk publish. So bulk publish, again, I mentioned it happens in 3 different tools. So we're going to look at it first in announcements. So in announcements, you might have a lot of drafts that you copy over from one site to another. You can select several, and then there's a publish to publish all of them in one go, which is kind of cool. You can also unpublish that way. So if you want to select multiple things and take them back to draft status, you can do that, again, multiple announcements at a time. The assignments works similarly, so you can select multiple assignments and publish them all at once. It's going to pick up whatever dates and times and things you previously did in the settings. And you can also make these draft again that way, which is really useful in assignments because there's not always a good way to bring an assignment back to draft, but you can do it that way. So, and in tests and quizzes, you only get the bulk publish option because tests and quizzes handles drafts a little differently, but you can select several, publish them all at once, and then you'll see that you have them up there at the top as active. You still have your draft items, so you can go back and delete the drafts or I'm sorry, delete the active ones and go back to the draft if you needed to. But it works a little bit differently with the unpublished because Samigo is or tests and quizzes is always a little unique. But that's the bulk publish. Great. Let me move on to name that face. So a lot of times you might have a large class of students and maybe you want to have a little help memorizing faces that go with names. So this is what the Name That Face game is designed to do. So as I said, it's designed for the instructor. It works in the roster tool with either official or profile photos. And you'll see there's this Name That Face button up at the top. And what it does is allow you to see a picture and then choose a name from the list, and it will tell you if you get it right or wrong. And if you get it right, you can say, I know this student, don't ask me again, and it'll put it into kind of your learned students. Um, if you get something wrong, it will let you keep seeing that image until you get it correct. And you can re-roll the student, which goes to a different student, or you can just keep selecting until you get them all correct. So this is just kind of a little recording showing you how that works. There's only 6 students in this particular class, so it'll go fast. And then once you have all of the students learned, there we go. All right, you can reset the game if you like to start over again. Um, and then it kind of starts from scratch with everybody included in the pool. So the other cool thing with this is that you can also make it available for students. So if you, let me pause this so it doesn't go away. So by default, students do not have that view all participants permission. But if you wanted students to play the game, if you want them to be able to learn their classmates, let's say, you could enable it in permissions. And once you do that, then the students, if they go to roster, would see the Name That Face button and would be able to play. So it's totally optional. It's really intended more for the instructor, but if you had a situation where you wanted students to use it, there is a way to make that possible. So I just think that game is really cool. And that was one of our additions from the folks at EDF as part of that S2U in Unidigital plan. All right, so moving on. Here we go. More granular site import. So what this is about is a lot of times when you roll content from term to term, the traditional way has been you can pick and choose which tools you bring over, but you had to bring over everything in a tool, even if you didn't want to use everything. So if you had like 25 quizzes, you had to bring all 25 over and then delete the ones you don't want. Well, what the granular site import does is it allows you to pick and choose items within tools when you roll from course to course. So let me show you the video and what that looks like. So if you go to import from site, and this will work for either merge or replace, works for both. You would select the site and continue. And then you have these little expandable sections. So you can select maybe just a couple of assignments. You can still select the whole tool, like with announcements. If you have a bunch of announcements, bring them all over. But tests and quizzes, if you only want to pick and choose a few, you can select just the ones you want. And then when you finish, it's going to add those items and only those items. So you don't have to then go back later and delete the ones you really didn't want to bring over. So you see here, I only have the two quizzes that I chose, and in assignments, I only have the two assignments that I chose. Now, just as a caveat, right now there's an open issue with lessons. It's supposed to let you pick certain lessons only. So if you only want to bring part of your lessons over, but there's a bug right now that it doesn't actually do that. It brings them all. So, but we hope to get that fixed quite soon. But the feature is designed to just bring over the selected items within each tool. All right. So we move on to my honorable mentions. So I tried to limit myself to five things that I really liked, but I just couldn't help myself. I had to stick in a few here at the end. So my honorable mentions are Safe Exam Browser integration in tests and quizzes, a high fidelity site content export and import, and the course cards in home dashboard. So Safe Exam Browser, if you haven't used it, let me just advance. These are just slides. They're not video. It's like lockdown browser. So if you wanted to kind of lock the student's browser so they can't go to other applications, um, it works best in a proctored setting because if they're at home, they could just have their phone or another computer. But if they're in a proctoring environment, it's a little more secure for any kind of high stakes testing that you wanted to do. So you can choose now to do the Safe Exam Browser option, and it's a free open source version of Lockdown Browser. And it actually has if you've used Respondus Lockdown Browser, it's very similar, but it has way more options than I recall from Respondus. So it gives you a lot more flexibility if you wanted to do any kind of special configuration. And for those of you interested in kind of a deep dive into Safe Exam Browser, we had a guest at our teaching and learning call a couple months ago, and it was recorded, and he went through all of the different options in detail. So there is a recording for that. If you're interested, let me know. I'm happy to send you the link. But I'm not going to do that here. I'm just showing you where you would get to it. So it's in the settings of a assessment, a tester quiz. And here's where you choose it. And when you do, you'll get some additional options here. And if you just go with all the default options, you're probably going to be fine in most cases, but it does give you a lot of options to configure it and to add additional passwords and things. So a lot of options there with the Safe Exam Browser and a very cool way to help secure your exams. Um, so my next uh, honorable mention for favorite things is the high fidelity site content export and import. And one of the reasons I didn't put this at the top, in my top five is because I wouldn't use it that much. Although I have to say, as when I'm using it to test things, it's very handy. But basically, it's the same export through lessons for Common Cartridge, but it's been enhanced so that it pulls a lot more information from all the various tools in Sakai, and it imports much, much cleaner because it includes what's called a Sakai archive within the larger archive. So it kind of knows where to put things a lot better. It's a lot closer to doing like a import from site in site info, except this lets you download it and import it somewhere else, either another Sakai instance, or if you're doing testing on QA and you want to import a bunch of content so you don't have to rebuild like 5 quizzes so you can test something, you can do that with this import really easily. So you get to it in the same spot. the export, CC, or import if you're bringing one back in. And then you'll see it looks slightly different. Um, your options here, you can export as plus a Sakai archive, which is a little bit bigger, but it's recommended for Sakai. And it also imports a lot better into other LMSs like Canvas or Brightspace. And you can export it that way. And then when you bring it in, you'll get the option here after you choose your export file that you're importing into a site. You have a little checkbox there to import the Sakai site archive if available. So it will look and see if that archive is in your IMS common cartridge file. And if it is, it'll bring that in instead of just the standard common cartridge. So that's what I said. It looks like a lot cleaner once you bring it into Sakai. It's got everything in the right place. It's a much higher fidelity import. So that's the content imports. My final honorable mention is course cards in home. And so this is a picture of what the course cards look like. This is the home dashboard. Dashboard's been around a version or two, but it's kind of had kind of a slow rollout. A lot of people are still using Overview. That's totally fine. But some folks have decided to replace Overview with Dashboard, which is kind of it's meant to be able to do at some point. It's got lots of different widgets for tools and grades and things like that. But it's got these course cards, which I think are very cool. So it gives you sort of a visual of different courses. And the way you get these pictures is within each course. If you activate the course dashboard, there's a place to set a course image. That's where these pictures come from. So you can actually change out what the default is just sort of a gray block. But the pictures can be set by the individual instructor by updating that course dashboard. And then if you have new items here, you'll see icons that appear at the bottom. So if you have like a new message or a new a test or something, students will actually see little icons there to let them know that they have new things available in those courses. All right, so that is all of my favorite things. There's lots more stuff in 25, which I don't have time to cover, but if anybody has any questions, I would be happy to answer them. So I will pause for a moment for questions. And I see Adrian noted that push notifications appear in the course cards. So that's what those little icons come from. All right, no questions? All right. Well, thank you all for your attention, and hopefully you learned about something new that you can look forward to when you upgrade. So we're going to take a short little break here, and let me see when our next session starts. Lightning talks start at 10:45, so we have just under 10 minutes. We've got 8 minutes until our next session. I'm going to leave the Zoom room up, but I will mute myself and go off video. So hopefully everyone will be back in just a few minutes for our lightning talks. Thanks, guys.